Hello and welcome to my good read. I'm Richard Vobes, and on today's show we're having a good read with Stig of the Dump by Clive King. Now, you may have already read it, you probably heard of it. It is a classic book, and I remember reading this, well, probably back when I was at primary school, which is quite a long time ago now. Anyway, it's still valid and it's still a terrific yarn. So I'm recommending it in today's video. So let me tell you something about Stig of the Dump. This is the story of Barney, who is, I think, 8 years old, and he's staying with his grandmother, and one day he goes to this chalk pit. Now, the chalk pit is very close to his grandmother's house, and everybody's told him, don't go near the chalk pit, don't stand near the end, because it's dangerous. Well, of course, you say that to a boy, and he's gonna go down to the end. He's going to have a look, and he does, and he has a peer over, and he can see right down into the bottom of this pit, and at the bottom, people have fly-tipped all sorts of junk. Fly-tipping is when people illegally dump stuff that they don't want. Instead of going to the local amenity tip, they just do it on the fly. They find somewhere out of the way and then they just dump their rubbish. It's very naughty. Anyway, people had been doing this at this particular dump for a long time, and Barney was looking down. He thought he could see bits of aeroplane and all sorts of strange things. Then the ground gave way and down he tumbled. Well, at the bottom of the pit, fortunately, where he hadn't hurt himself, he came across a stranger, a weird-looking chap who was semi-naked, apart from stuff around his waist, sort of furs and things, and he had a strange face and really wild hair. He was a bit grubby, and he grunted a lot. He tried to make friends with him, and he thought the chap's name was Stig. He looked very much like a prehistoric man, like a caveman, in fact. And so their friendship slowly developed, Stig learning about the modern way and Barney learning about the caveman way. Stig was taking all sorts of bits of rubbish and recycling them, making them into useful things. There was a gear stick from a car, great long thing. In the old days, some of the cars had these big long gear sticks, and I remember them well. And he was using it as a poker to poke a fire. He also used a car aerial. Now, they used to be long and whippy, and he was using that as a bow and arrow. He used all sorts of things for interesting and different things, and Barney thought the whole thing was funny. Now, the book goes on with lots of their adventures. They meet other people, and all sorts of exciting things happen. And again, of course, I'm not going to tell you what happens in the end, because the whole pleasure of reading is letting the story unfold. However, I'm going to tell you a little bit about how Clive King came up with the idea. He used to live in a place called Ash in Kent, and there was this pit that he saw and visited, and he did look over and thought, oh, it's a bit disused and there's rubbish being dumped down the bottom. How extraordinary. But it was a very boring place. Now, to a writer, that's a bit of a challenge, because he thought to himself, how can I liven this up? And he came up with the answer. He put a caveman in at the bottom. Nobody in the story seemed to believe Barney when he said he was able to go off and meet up with this Stig. But they were quite happy, because in those days you were able to roam around. There were many more places to go. The towns and villages weren't quite as busy and built up as there were. There were not as many cars on the roads back then. I mean, it was published in 1963. So when I'm recording this, that's about 54 years ago. So the world has changed a bit, but in this remote place, it hadn't changed at all. And these things could be going on now. So even though the book is pretty old, you could still imagine what it would be like to find a special friend with all this magical rubbish that could be turned into wonderful things. I'm going to read you a little excerpt from Stig of the Dump, and I hope that this will inspire you to try and get hold of a copy and enjoy it for yourself. So this is a bit, I think, from chapter... I can't remember the chapter. Here it is. Is it chapter 2 or chapter 3? I'm just looking for the page. And when you want it, of course, you can't find it. Let's have a look. Chapter 2. And this way, he's met Stig once, and he wants to go back again and meet him. He has some carrots, which he's dangled down to see if Stig would have a nibble on them. And now he's made the long way round to get down into the bottom of the pit so that he could see Stig. So he was determined that he would go and visit him. That is, if he could find his way among the giant nettles. Suddenly, there was Stig, coming to meet him straight through a nettle patch, as if stings meant nothing to him. Barney stopped. What now? Shake hands? Rub noses? No, perhaps not. He remembered the apples that he had stowed inside his shirt. He took one out and held it towards Stig on the palm of his hand, as if he was trying to make friends with a horse. "I hope you like the carrots, Stig," said Barney. "Have an apple." Stig took the apple quite politely between thumb and finger, not between his teeth, as Barney had somehow expected him to, and he sniffed it. Barney took another apple for himself and bit into it. "Good," he said. "Delicious." Stig took a bite, seemed to like it, smiled. They both started walking to the den, munching their apples. Stig just blundered through the nettles, and as far as Barney could see, they stung him and raised bumps as they did on other people, but he just didn't care. Barney avoided the nettles as much as possible. He got stung once or twice, but decided not to make a fuss about it. Stigs don't mind stings, he thought, so he'd better not. Anyway, that's just a little small sample, well worth a great read to have a look at Stig of the Dump. So that's my recommendation. I hope you enjoy it. Do let me know what you think of the book. If you're an older listener or viewer and you've read it, tell me what your memories of it and if you ever believed in the wonders of Stig. Until the next time, do tune in again, and thanks for following and subscribing, and give me a thumbs up. Until then, bye for now.